Привіт всім! Мене звуть Анна Хомуткова, а в ефірі KulturCafé. Сьогоднішній випуск ми присвятили нашому кінофестивалю «Тижню австрійського кіно», який цьогоріч святкує свій 10-річний ювілей. Сьогодні наша програма складатиметься з двох частин. У першій частині я зустрінусь з директором Австрійської кінокомісії Мартіном Швайгхофером, з яким ми поговоримо про особливості австрійського кіно. А у другій частині до нас завітає програмний директор компанії Arthouse Traffic та багаторічний організатор тижнів австрійського кіно в Україні Ілля Дядик. З Іллею ми розкажемо вам про програму нашого фестивалю цього року. Тож, вітаємо у студії Мартіна Швайгхофера. Good evening, Mr. Schwaighhofer. It is very nice to meet you.
Oh, it's a true pleasure, and thank you very much for the invitation, Anna. And I'm looking forward to whatever kind of questions you have, and I will try to answer them as faithfully as possible, okay?
Great. That's what we're looking for in the KulturCafé. So let's talk about Austrian films. The Austrian Film Commission promotes and supports Austrian films worldwide, right? So what exactly does the Commission do to achieve these goals?
It's if I would say there's sort of how to do it manual, it would be easy, but actually there is nothing like this kind of manual. So it's something that you have to also learn by doing. But what you have to understand that, of course, over the years we have seriously, of course, honed our techniques, meaning we have tried a lot. We had our errors because it's always also doing about this and then maybe finding out some things that do work and others that don't work so well. But bottom line is that honing those techniques also means, of course, that we've created a lot of tools that would help us to achieve those goals that we're trying to achieve. Meaning we do need these precision instruments. We do need a set of rules and ideas in how to deal with those things. So, and I think it's a twofold kind of thing, because on the one hand, we are, of course, dealing with the label Austrian films. Sort of our one ambition is to brand Austrian films and do the branding there. And so in a general way, and on the other hand, of course, it is about to deal with every single individual film. And that's a very important lesson, of course, and it's no big secret, but every film is not like any other. So meaning basically whatever kind of strategy and idea and whatever kind of what you're doing with one film is not necessarily the best to do it with another film. So you have to really sit down, and what we do is we sort of start talking seriously about films with, let's say, a first rough cut. I mean, we know about it before, but once there's a first kind of rough cut, then we sort of start dealing very attentively with what the potential of the film is, where it could go, where it should premiere, how we would like to set it up, who we could talk to promote is such a very unprecise word in a way, but sort of it also comes as a big bundle of things, in order. And our ambition is, simply speaking, that of course we want to get the best possible platform, launching pad, career for each of those films. And I mean, see its potential and work towards that potential. You see, that also means we're not shoe salespeople, you know what I mean? But we're dealing with films, which means we're very carefully handling, or try to very carefully handle, the ideas of these authors, of these filmmakers. Of course, we're mostly in the art house world. We're not in the blockbuster world, but in the art house thing. So there's a lot of poetry, there's a lot of there's a lot of things that need special attention, and to let that work and sort of try to see again what I mentioned with the potential, and sort of inform others about that. Mm-hmm. That is the key thing, and that's what I see. The center of all the things we do is the films. The films are the center, and everything what we do as side effects is sort of supporting that ambition and that idea.
Mm-hmm. I see. Every year you produce catalogs with the best Austrian movies,
right.
Which are very handy, by the way, when we choose the program for our festival. Okay. Can you tell us a bit more? How do you choose the best movies? How do you select them?
Well, we don't really see that's a bit of a problem. We do not want to choose. We do not select the films. But what we do is we have, let's say we do have this one catalog that you're referring to, which we call review. We call it Austrian Films This Year Review, meaning it's really looking back at this past year. Sort of, we always publish that in December. Mm-hmm. So we look back at what the year was like, and our ambition there is to really have every feature-length film, documentaries and fiction films that premiered in that year. Mm-hmm. We do have another little brochure that's called Coming Soon, which is usually not this year, however, because of the pandemic and so on, which we usually would be launching and publishing at the beginning of the year, mm-hmm. and is sort of giving you a glimpse of the future, meaning what is this year going to be. Of course, the main point, and that thing has very much shifted, is that our main, let's say, platform to communicate with the world and with everybody who's interested in would be, of course, the website. So, I mean, everything that's in those catalogs would be on the website, mm-hmm. but then on the website there would be so much more. There would be the interviews and the messages and the, whatever, sort of very up-to-date kind of thing. Plus, then you can also download the catalog if you want to, or you have an enormous search tool where you can really go way back to find films. And I think that search machine is pretty good that we have there. But we make a point that we're not curating. We're not looking at 5 films and saying, okay, we choose this one and the others we forget. No, I think we're dealing with films that are either expected to be very high-profile ones, by a director who's well known and so on, or, however, the thing that I like best in a way are those that come as a total surprise, mm-hmm. because nobody counted on that. It's like, who is that? Never heard of this person. And then all of a sudden there's one that sort of, there are these films that are, that come out of nowhere. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, that's amazing. And sort of this discovery moment, I think, is really very exciting and very valuable and very, part of what makes our work exciting.
Mm-hmm. I see. Very interesting. So it's a good idea to check the website if you need some more information.
Yes.
That we will do.
Okay.
Okay. You've been executive director of the commission for almost 30 years.
And don't remind me. Yes.
But that means that nobody knows Austrian movies better than you. What can you tell about the developments in the Austrian film industry during this time?
Very well. I mean, the whole world has been changing dramatically, and not only the film world, but the whole world in a way that was unfathomable before that. So, and the film world has changed dramatically, and therefore also the small Austrian film world has also changed a lot. I mean, and it was very small. I think we had sort of the bonus or the advantage of being an outsider. Nobody was really counting much on us, and I think we did a similar thing, that we were extremely lucky in having a number of very important directors like Michael Haneke very early on. So in exactly what we were doing, in saying like, okay, basically we have no chance because, we're a small country and whatnot, but we do have some very special directors. We do have some. And sort of we focus on their work because in the ideal world, we always thought they could be the door opener. They could open the doors for us to let others in or bring others into the room. And I must say it just worked beautifully. So it was just so nice. And there were so many directors, and there's a constant influx in a way of new people, of new talent, of new ideas, of new visions, and so on. So I think it has extremely changed for us. And on a more general level, of course, it has changed a lot too, because if you look at the fact that, let's say, 15 years ago or something like that, the main problem or the biggest obstacle for filmmaking was always like finances. It was always like, how can you get the money? How can you get this thing off the ground, and so on and so on. And basically that has changed a lot also because of the technique that we have, and it's not 35 millimeters anymore, and and all that. The film stock is luxury by now, as you know, and all that. But I think what we've seen now in sort of in the next stage is, in the past 5 years, I think the most important question is really, who is our audience? Who are the people who watch films? Where do they watch them? Why do they watch them? How can we communicate with them? How can we tell them that there's a film? That's the same in the Ukraine. I mean, it's the same for everybody. In addition, however, now with the pandemics and all that, we do have that extra problem that we need to deal with. That is, what about the cinemas? Will they survive? How will they survive? Will people, just by the experience of this past year, will they maybe just stick around and focus on Netflix and Amazon and Apple or something? It's just streaming services, and they're totally, an overflow of mostly very mainstreamy, not very interesting things. I think this is the real problem and challenge we face right now. And if we go, as I mentioned, if the Cannes Festival happens now in 10 days, which is going to be the first real festival since Berlin 2020, more or less within 1.5 years. For 1.5 years, there was nothing. And now when we go to Cannes, and I'm very lucky to say and very happy to say that we have 2 films there in the official program, in the selection, which is beautiful and wonderful. However, it is, of course, the point right now, what is that going to be there? I mean, who will come? Who will not come? Will the distributors pick up things or not? Or are distributors, are the world sales interested? Or do they have a huge slate and a back catalog that they need to reduce? Or how risky is this whole game? So that's how the world has changed. I mean, that small film world, ours as yours as everybody else's. But we very clearly see those elements or those rocks that are flying in our direction, and we need to sort of deal with that. You know what I mean? So that's how it changed. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Yeah, so a lot of questions are still open. Yeah, and like one of the biggest ones, how has the pandemic influenced the industry?
You know, I mean, I can just, let's say, connect to what I said before now, that yes, it had a huge effect, but the most things is it left a lot of question marks. It's all these question marks in, okay, will we go back to where we were before or not? Who will survive? Who will not? What are people going to watch and what not? How, and so on and so on. You know, I mean, there's, and it's not that films have not been, you know, films have been shot a lot. They're being produced en masse, really. And I must say, in Austria, we were very lucky because the cultural ministry sort of set up something like a default liability program, meaning production companies could start producing. And if, because of the pandemic, they would have to shut down for a week or two or something like that, there would be a fund to compensate them, you know. So, I mean, the risk for the producers in that moment was seriously reduced. And as we see now, I mean, if you just look at the Cannes Festival or whatever, they had some 2,000 feature film length films that you know want to get in, or even more. And Venice has the same amount, and everybody has more and more films. So everybody's now, you know, sort of looking at the opportunity to get a premiere at one of those things and hope to, with those launching pads, jump into the market again and do what they want to do. I mean, quite honestly, I still think 2021 now is going to be an exceptional year that is not, you know, that is far from normal and will not go down as normal at all.
Does Austrian film industry differ somehow from these industries in other German-speaking countries?
Well, let's say there's the other two German countries are Germany and Switzerland. Part of it, it differs from Switzerland because Switzerland has, as you know, 4 languages, because there's also French and Italy mostly in German. So at least these 3 very active ones. The main difference is really that Germany is a big country, has a big industry, has a lot of money, has a lot of everything. Austria is just the opposite. We don't really have much of an industry. We don't have much of a market. I mean, we're like a 9 million people country. I mean, it's tiny, you know. That's more like Switzerland, but we're tiny. So basically, that situation has from the beginning forced us to look beyond the country's borders. When we do films, whatever kind of films we have, any with some international appeal, hopefully we'll try to look abroad. In Germany, big country, they can do a film, and if it works in Germany, it's perfectly fine for them. That's like in Italy or in Spain or in France and so on. No, we need basically to export. We need to get out. So I think that is one thing. And if I say we don't really have an industry, then that means that all the productions very heavily really depend on subsidies. So I mean, without subsidies, governmental, you know, monies, production money, there wouldn't be any films at all, because again, you cannot recoup that kind of thing in this basically non-existent market. So the situation here is that while this is a disadvantage, of course, that that we're so dependent on public money, on the other hand, is a huge advantage, because since we don't have that industry, we also don't have TV editors who want to, influence and manipulate. We don't have the pressure, the industry pressure to play in the mainstream and swim there, So the thing is, even if you take some of the most important Austrian directors, you would probably see that even somebody like Michael Haneke, and I repeat his name here because he's sort of a guardian, whatever, but he's just this very important and very iconic person here, of course. A filmmaker like him would have not survived his first film if he was in Germany, because his first film, which was actually one of his best, had about, 1,000 or 1,500 admissions in Austria. In Germany, in this kind of thing, it would have been his first and his last film. He wouldn't have been, nobody would have invested in that, say, go do your home movies or something like that. So I think the advantage is for Austria that since we do have not this pressure from the industry, we have, and we could always, we could be the alternative. We could be the surprise. We could come, from the sidelines or something like that. We could do things that others would not be allowed to do. We could do crazy things, enough of them. And yes, we did. And it served us really, really well, because on the international level, in many ways, we have been, it does, I don't mean to sound pretentious here, but I think we had a lot more success internationally in the past 15, 20 years than the Germans did. And they only come back now. I mean, they're super strong. They have fantastic commercial successes and all that. But, when it comes to awards and we look really good. And there's been a lot of them always say, like, what do you do in Austria, to have those successes, and why don't we have them? And the point is exactly because we're in a way pretty free to do as we please, which is not true. But I mean, I'm exaggerating a bit. But the thing is, yes, we're a lot freer in also in the possibility to say, okay, mistake didn't work, so next one.
Yeah, freedom is always great.
Yes.
Last question, a bit personal. What are your favorite movies, Austrian movies? Maybe you have the top 5 of your favorite Austrian movies of all times.
No, I cannot do that, and I don't want to do that, because I tell you, if you tell me I should tell you my 10 favorite international films or 20 or of all times, I would start sweating badly, because it's really horribly difficult. And to name one of them, no, I could not, and I did not want to do that. What I would like to tell you, however, is that I think I've always been very interested in directors. So, you see what directors do and so on. So I think, as I mentioned, there's somebody like Michael Haneke, who is definitely, as I say, a very iconic door-opening person. And I mean, this first film that I mentioned that had no audiences is a film called The Seventh Continent, and is amazing, and is still, I would still rank it as one of his very best, but then there's The Piano Teacher, and there's The White Ribbon, and so on. So I think Haneke is really an iconic person and a very, very important director for Austria. I would say Ulrich Seidel. I don't know if you know Ulrich, but Ulrich has, for example, Import-Export was partly shot in the Ukraine, as you might know. But Uli Seidel, for example, is just the opposite of Michael Haneke in his whole attitude and how he works and all that. But he, let's say, he did this thing called Dog Days, which was, he had a lot of films before that, but Dog Days is still phenomenal. And he did a film, a Paradise trilogy that is outstanding. And he did documentaries that are outstanding, and so on and so on. So I would mention Uli Seidel. Then there's somebody like Ruth Beckerman. I don't know how familiar you are with her or not, but she had like a film called Waldheim's Waltz. I mean, she also has a long list of films, but this Waldheim's Waltz, and Waldheim was this Austrian general director of the UN, of the United Nations, with a very shady past, because he was sort of he had this Nazi past, and it really exploded and everything. But he, so she did a film that's called Waldheim's Waltz, and I think that's an amazing film and still is. And on the other hand, she did a very, something very poetic, like The Dreamed Ones, which was a documentary, not a documentary, they're always more essayistic about Paul Celan and Ingeborg Bachmann, more or less, this couple, and they exchanged some very, very important and deep and wonderful letters. So, for example, that, or who else? There's like Kitza Kofi and Rainer Friemel. I'm not sure. Rainer might have also been to Kiev at one point, but they're a couple, and they make these films. They did like films like La Pivelina, or they had these Notes from the Underground, from the underworld, actually, because the underground would be Dostoevsky, but no, it's Notes from the Underworld, which was a film that premiered in Berlin last year. So they're two filmmakers that I feel very confident and very good with. And then there's, for example, Nikolaus Geierhardt, who's probably our most outstanding documentarist. And he did a film called Pripyat. As I don't know if you saw that but many others. But this Pripyat film is really a very, very scary, very eye-opening film, and I think a very courageous film also that he shot. Then it's many years ago that he went there and shot this film. Or there's Michael Glavoga. I don't know if you know him. I think he also shot some in Ukraine with a film called Working Man's Death, which was sort of an episodic film about people who do physical labor, and how in our world actually physical labor is not, valued in the way that it should be valued. And he did also, he passed on, but he did a film called Untitled, which more or less was his epitaph, his legacy at the end, that what he left behind in an outstanding film. And then there's Jessica Hausner, for example. I could go on, but Jessica, who had a film called Lourdes, and she was in competition she was in Venice and in Cannes and many others, and she had Amor Fuso. And she had her filming competition called Little Joe in Cannes 2 years ago, and so on. But anyway, so I think other than just giving you some films, I'm giving you, 5, 6, 7, 8 directors. I'm giving you some directors, and I hope they're inspiring, those names.
Sure.
They're worth researching.
Yeah, thank you for these recommendations. I will definitely watch these movies. And I'm sure that our spectators are also interested now. Thank you a lot for this talk. It was amazing.
Thank you so much.
I hope to meet you also personally once, maybe at one of our festivals in the coming years. Yeah.
It'll be a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me. And I wish all your viewers a good evening too.
І зараз я хочу запросити до студії «KulturCafé» програмного директора Arthouse Traffic Іллю Дядика.
Привіт, Аню.
Привіт, Ілля. Тож, ювілейний фестиваль, 10-й тиждень австрійського кіно. На що чекати глядачам?
Ми відібрали 5 чудових картин. 4 з них абсолютно нові стрічки, які ще в Україні не були показані, і, відповідно, яких не бачили більшість глядачів. І, в принципі, не тільки Україна, а й світ, у зв'язку з тим, що у нас тут вирує пандемія, і в більшості країн кінотеатри взагалі не працювали. Тому я дуже радий, що ми можемо повернутись в кінотеатри, в темні зали і дивитись кіно на великих екранах. І відкриваємо ми фестиваль «Нарцисом і Гольдмундом» режисера Штефана Руцовського. Це одноіменна екранізація одноіменного роману Германа Гессе, така філософська притча про 2 друзів-послушників, які обирають досить різні шляхи прожиття свого життя, скажімо так. Документальна стрічка «З Австрії до Австралії» режисерів Домініка Бахіса і Андреса Буцімана про подорож декількома континентами на велосипедах. Хлопці вирушають з Австрії в Австралію, проїжджають 19 країн, зустрічають безліч труднощів, викликів, пригод, відповідно, відкриттів. Якщо глядачі хочуть дізнатись, як вони доберуться до Австралії чи не доберуться, варто прийти в кінотеатр «Жовтень». До речі, в Києві ми показуємо фестиваль в кінотеатрі «Жовтень». Варто прийти в кінотеатр «Жовтень» і подивитись кіно там. Є в нас «Лисиця в норі». Це картина така досить відома в Австрії, отримала декілька нагород національного фестивалю Діагоналі від режисера Армана Ріагі. Досить брутальна стрічка про викладача в в'язниці. В'язниця для підлітків. І зустрічаючи одну з ув'язнених дівчин, викладач має подолати свої власні страхи і побороти якісь свої перепони в житті. «Розбий моє серце» – це копродукція з декількох країн, режисерки Олександри Макарової, про ромів Пепе і Марселя, романтична любовна драма, про те, як головні герої переїжджають в заможній Відень, де вони змушені жебракувати. І, звісно ж, головний герой закохується в місцеву дівчину, але на шляху їх кохання стає її дядько дівчини. І от така собі історія Ромео і Джульєти. Але найголовнішим і таким спеціальним показом, яким я дуже пишаюся, є показ картини «Піаністка». Це дуже видатна австрійська стрічка від Міхаеля Ганеке. В цьому році картина відзначає своє 20-річчя. Вона була знята і вийшла на великі екрани в 2001 році. Тому ось в головних ролях грає Ізабель Юпер. Картина отримала прям безліч нагород і потрапила в всі топ-списки найкращих фільмів всіх часів і народів. І тому глядачам, які цю картину ще не бачили, і навіть тим глядачам, які вже бачили цю картину, раджу обов'язково йти і дивитись реставровану копію на великих екранах.
Прекрасно. Чудова, цікава програма. Тож у Києві фестиваль відбудеться у кінотеатрі «Жовтень» з 15 по 20 липня. А в яких ще містах можна буде подивитися австрійське кіно?
Наразі в нас є дати в Одесі з 30 серпня по 2 вересня. Насправді у нас фестиваль в Києві у нас є такі предпрем'єрні покази для Києва, які ось зараз відбудуться в липні. А далі фестиваль буде мандрувати регіонами України ближче до вересня. З 30 серпня це буде Одеса, а далі ми чекаємо підтверджень інших міст і пропонуємо керівникам, активістам різних кіноклубів долучатись до фестивалю і проводити покази цієї чудової програми в своїх кіноклубах, університетах, школах, культурних хабах. Для цього потрібно просто подати просту заявку на сайті нашого проєкту «Кіноклуб. Всеукраїнська мережа», і ви отримаєте всі матеріали, необхідні для організації показів.
Добре. Ілля, це 10-й фестиваль, і ти обрав програму для кожного з 10 фестивалів австрійського кіно. Розкажи, будь ласка, про свої фільми-улюбленці протягом цих років.
Ну, насправді для мене улюбленою головною рисою австрійського кіно є те, що австрійські режисери не бояться експериментувати. Дуже багато фільмів зняті на межі якоїсь фантастики, абсурду і чогось сюрреалістичного. Мабуть, одним з найулюбленіших моїх фільмів за всі часи існування нашого фестивалю буде «Солдат Жанет» Деніела Хесля. Ми цей фільм показували в 2013 році. Він отримав нагороди і в Роттердамі, і в безліч нагород національних кінопремій в Австрії. Він дуже дивний, але прям дуже крутий. І от кожного року я намагаюся знайти щось схоже на «Солдат Жанет», не скільки по історії, а скільки просто от по стилю зйомок. І зазвичай ці фільми створюються саме в Австрії. Був чудовий фільм «Один із нас» Штефана Ріхтера 15-го року з нагородами в Сан-Себастьяні. Була картина «Земля під моїми ногами» Марії Крейтац із Берліналі 2019 року. Звісно ж, я не знаю, майже всі картини Зайделя, це дуже видатний документаліст австрійський. Вони всі просто божевільні. Попри те, що картини документальні, вони дуже сюрреалістичні. Тому ось за ці риси я обожнюю австрійське кіно і дуже радий, що ми можемо привозити ці картини українським глядачам.
Прекрасно. Тож запрошуємо всіх на тиждень австрійського кіно. Відкриття вже 15 липня. Будемо дуже раді бачити всіх наших глядачів на першому показі. І на всіх наступних, звичайно, також. Дякую тобі, Ілля.
Дякую, Аня.
Ми побачимося вже дуже скоро. І бажаємо всім гарного вечора та пока-пока.